Hello and welcome to Endocrine Lab, Lab 1. So today we're going to go through the different endocrine glands, kind of where they're located, and some of the hormones that come out of them. So the first gland we have is the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. This pituitary gland hangs off of the brain on the bottom side. It is connected to the brain through this infundibulum. You don't need to know that specifically, but just kind of for your information, it connects this pituitary gland to this hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, if you remember from Anatomy 1, really regulates a lot of different body things like body temperature, different body regulations. It also creates a lot of hormones. This hypothalamus is kind of that master area of the endocrine system because it creates most of the releasing hormones, and it also creates a lot of different inhibiting hormones. These releasing hormones, like thyroid gland releasing hormone, it causes that thyroid gland, or it actually goes down to the pituitary gland, which causes the thyroid gland to release its hormones, but it also has inhibiting hormones that prevents thyroid hormones from being released. Just as an example, the pituitary gland is separated into an anterior and a posterior portion. The anterior portion creates a lot of hormones that are, some of them are going to other endocrine glands to cause these hormones to be released. It also can go directly to specific areas like growth hormone. Growth hormone is that hormone that when you're a kid causes you to grow taller. And as an adult, it actually maintains your muscle mass. It maintains some of your bone strength. Some of the other ones that come out of this anterior pituitary gland, we have adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. This causes the adrenal glands to release their hormones, specifically cortisol. Cortisol is one of those stress hormones. We have thyroid stimulating hormone. As I mentioned, hypothalamus creates releasing hormones, inhibiting hormones that are going down to that anterior pituitary. The thyroid releasing hormone causes thyroid stimulating hormone, which goes to the thyroid gland to produce that thyroid hormone. The endocrine system likes to work as a chain reaction. One thing causes the next thing, which causes the next thing to occur. Anterior hormone also produces prolactin, which in women stimulates milk production. We have follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These work in both males and females to produce those oocytes, sperm. It also helps with the release of testosterone, estrogens, progesterones, ovulation in females. It works with a lot of different things. Posterior pituitary gland. If you kind of notice from this image, that posterior pituitary gland, these are all neurons right here. They are creating the hormones that are then going to travel down these axons to that posterior pituitary gland, which is then going to release out these specific hormones. So the posterior pituitary gland does not create its own hormones. What it's doing is taking the hormones created in the hypothalamus that are then traveling down these neurons to the posterior pituitary gland before they get released. Some of these hormones, there's two. There's only two that come from this posterior pituitary. That would be oxytocin. Oxytocin is known as that hormone that helps to stimulate childbirth, causing contractions of that uterus, but it also helps to eject milk from the breast. We also have antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone, if you think a diuretic causes you to lose water, antidiuretic hormone does the exact opposite. It causes you to keep water in your system. It's one of those nice balances that our body tries to keep a specific level of water in our system. Antidiuretic hormone plays a role in this. So if we travel down here, we can see these adrenal glands. The adrenal glands sit right on top of the kidneys. They almost kind of look like a little hat that sits on top of the kidneys. These are those adrenal glands that are creating a lot of different types of hormones. So we have different layers to these adrenal glands. And in the adrenal cortex, which is that outside, the cortex is separated into three separate layers. The outermost layer creates these glucocorticoids that secrete out that cortisol. You can think of cortisol as kind of, it gets higher in levels of stress. So it's going to increase your blood glucose levels. It suppresses some of that inflammation in your system, but it kind of helps you respond to stressful situations. The next layer, the middle layer, secretes out those mineral corticoids. So if you think minerals, aldosterone is going to regulate your salt levels. Salt follows, or water follows salt, that sodium in your body. So mineral corticoids are going to actually help to regulate your fluid levels by regulating your sodium levels, if that makes any sense to anybody, because it's helping to maintain your blood pressure. Your fluid levels in your body, your fluid levels in your blood actually are helping to regulate your blood pressure. Too much fluid is actually going to increase your blood pressure. Not enough fluid is going to lower your blood pressure. We'll go through that when you get to the chapter on blood vessels specifically. But those mineral corticoids are regulating your sodium levels because water follows that sodium. So if we're getting rid of sodium, we're getting rid of water. The inner layer of the adrenal cortex secretes out androgens. Androgens are like sex hormones, specifically testosterone in females after menopause. So after menstrual cycles stop, this is the only place that females are really getting hormones, is from this specific layer of that adrenal cortex. We have an inner layer of our adrenal glands, that medulla. Medulla is that inner layer. This is what creates those epinephrine, norepinephrine. We talked about those when you talked about the autonomic nervous system. These hormones are coming from that adrenal medulla. So they're kind of getting that fight or flight kind of response kind of occurring. So it's increasing your blood pressure, increasing your heart rate. It's dilating those pupils so you can see better. It's slowing down your digestion so your blood can go to those vital organs that can let you run away. The other organ or gland we have here is the pancreas. Most people know that the pancreas secretes out insulin. There's others that come from the pancreas, other hormones. Insulin is secreted by beta cells. We have alpha, beta, those are the two main ones, alpha and beta. There's some other ones in there you don't necessarily need to know, but those are the two main ones. So insulin is coming from those beta cells, and its job is to lower your blood sugar. So it helps cells take up that glucose to use for energy. So it's taking that sugar out of your blood and it is allowing that blood sugar to go down. The other main hormone you need to know from this pancreas is glucagon. Glucagon comes from those alpha cells, and this is the hormone that raises your blood sugar. These two hormones are known as antagonistic because they work opposite of each other. Insulin's going to raise your blood glucose level. Glucagon is going to lower your blood glucose levels. We also have a couple of hormones like pancreatic polypeptide that's regulating your appetite and digestion. We have gastrin that helps to kind of stimulate the stomach to secrete out those different acids that help us break down different foods. These are some of the other hormones that can come from that pancreas, but that glucagon and that insulin are the two main ones. Next, we have our thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland sits in your neck. It sits just below that thyroid cartilage. This is that thyroid cartilage, also known in men, is that Adam's apple is kind of created there. So this thyroid gland kind of sits below it. It's kind of a butterfly shape. This only shows half of it. Here's the picture where you can see the full thyroid gland. It's kind of a butterfly shape that kind of surrounds that trachea. Yeah, that trachea. So this gland secretes out thyroxine or T4 and triiodothyroxine, which is known as T3. Triiodothyroxine or T3 hormone, that's the active form of our thyroid hormone. It's going to regulate your metabolism. It regulates your growth and your kind of development. Thyroxine is or T4 is the inactive form. It has to be converted to the active form or T3 for it to be of use in our system. The other hormone that comes from the thyroid gland is calcitonin. Calcitonin, calcium, it's going to help regulate that calcium level. Calcitonin decreases your calcium levels in your blood. If we're talking about antagonistic hormones, here we see that thyroid gland. I'll come back to that thought in a second. So here's that thyroid gland. Here's a thyroid gland here on a cadaver. Here's a thyroid gland sitting on a model here. You can see how it kind of fits in with everything going on around it. Here's that thyroid gland again. We also see here the thymus. The thymus is a gland that helps to make and mature blood cells, like white blood cells specifically, to help them fight and do their specific role that they play out. Different white blood cells do different things. When we get to the blood chapter, which is chapter 19, we'll go into some of that. And then we get to the lymphatic system, we go into that in a lot greater detail. But this thymus is it is an endocrine gland because it does secrete out hormones, but it also works to help your immune system. So here's the one I was trying to get to before, parathyroid. Parathyroid sits on the back of the thyroid gland. So this is the back side. Now we're looking at the back side of the neck. There's usually 4 little glands that sit inside this thyroid gland, and they secrete out parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone is that hormone that's going to raise your blood calcium level. I mentioned antagonistic, so calcium or calcitonin lowers your blood calcium level. Those are antagonistic because they work opposite. Parathyroid raises, calcitonin lowers. So they're trying to maintain that calcium level within a very narrow range that our body needs to function. Here's another adrenal gland, another image of this one. So you can see it's kind of this little hat that's sitting on top of this kidney here. Here we can see the different layers. Come in a little bit. You can see that cortex on the outside, that medulla on the inside. Here you can't see how the cortex is made up into 3 different layers coming through here. You can see that on the slide or on the histology, which I have later in the PowerPoint. But these are different, kind of breaks it down a little bit into the different layers for you. Here you see the pancreas again, the different areas of the pancreas. Here we get into the testes. The testes are technically they secrete out testosterone. They also secrete out some other hormones, inhibin, relaxin, but they also produce sperm. So this is where the main place where males are going to get their testosterone from, though. In females, we have the ovaries. The ovaries kind of hidden in this nice little ligament or mesometrium here. Here we can see the ovaries that are cut open. So ovaries is where women get progesterone, estrogens. They also get inhibin. They're also going to get relaxin. Different hormones that have different uses throughout our system as females. So here we're starting to get into more of the histology of some of these. This is the pancreas. In the pancreas, we have these little isolates. These isolates specifically are where we get those alpha and beta cells that are making that insulin and that glucagon. Here you can see another one. I think this one's a little bit better of a pancreatic isolate, where you can see those alpha, or you can see the differences in the types of tissues. I think this is just a better staining of this. This shows how those alpha and beta cells, they look way too similar on a histology slide here to ask the differences between the two. But being able to see that there's these alpha cells in here, there's these beta cells in here, there's a lot of these different cells that are secreting out all these different hormones. So here's just another example of those alpha and beta cells as we go through and look at all these different areas here. You can see how these isolates are completely different from the surrounding tissue. Those surrounding tissues are making different digestive enzymes that are helping to break down food. This is everything for the endocrine system. Thank you very much for listening.